Hi there, I'm Graham Fitch and welcome to this month's practice clinic live, beaming to you from Wimbledon here. And here's what we do. Online Academy subscribers send us questions on specific problem spots to do with practicing in their pieces, and what I do is I can't claim to answer them, but I aim to address them in this particular live situation. So please do let me know where you're watching from, and if you like to click all those lovely buttons. I can see Viv and Annie and Betty, welcome, and then Tan is watching us. So do, put comments in there, please do like and subscribe and all that stuff. And what I'll do now is just get straight into the first question, which comes to us from Diane, who says, I would appreciate input on practice approaches to coordinating the left and right hands in Mozart's A minor Sonata K310 second movement. And Diane mentions measures both 16 to 17. The same situation occurs later, yes. I have no trouble playing either hand separately, but the trill falls apart on the third beat against the 32nd notes. In the left hand, I can manage it with a measured trill, but not with a free trill. These few bars have been an insurmountable barrier to playing the piece. Thank you for your time in reading and hopefully considering this request. Yes, this is the second theme of the second movement, which always feels to me like wind music, woodwind music. So we've got this repeated note at the top here. Staccato everything. Now this is the trill. Or you could do either. I like a termination on that last part. Okay, so Estella says, it's too early at 4 a.m, but with one eye open, good morning all. That's nice, yes. People watch us from all over the world, so different times. Yeah, okay, now let's have a little look at that, what's going on there. See, the temptation is to go straight to the trill, but I would always, when you've got a difficulty in one hand, or, there's one particular difficulty there with playing the trill, but Diane's question was how to coordinate it with the left hand. I would make sure first that the left hand is incredibly good by itself. So just a few things. Staccato doesn't mean short, it means separated. So I'd be careful with these repeated G's to keep the note, keep my finger in the key, not to come up like that, because it gives us a kind of chicken sound. So I'm holding my eighth note, my quaver, in the left hand long. That's not marked with a dot. Yeah, a little bit of length there. Now I would make the left hand here, these quavers, these eighth notes, half length, up, up. See how that works? Otherwise they're too short. And a nice shape. If you were to sing that, you'd bound to make a little crescendo diminuendo, aren't you there? See how, while those are staccato, they're not short, because they're the staccato quavers. Little time there. You can take a moment there. Now, here's where the left hand has to do this, which is quite a tall order. I can have a bit of pedal there, a little bit. Hard. I think what's especially tricky about it is this corner. This is the bit I think you were meaning, Diane, isn't it? There. Now, my hand is big, but I still find that awkward. Because I have to, if I want to connect, which I probably would, I would have to really open my hand up for that. Now, if you can't manage a connection, it's perfectly okay to just make a little gap. I would do this. I don't think that's going to be audible at the speed, especially with the trill going on upstairs. So my first recommendation would be to just take the left hand part there in bars 17, 18 with two hands. Now you may think, well, that's cheating, isn't it? What it does, by taking this with two hands, I can create the ideal oral image. In other words, it's easy for me to create the sound I'm after using two hands. And then what I aim to do is to replicate that sound with just one hand. Hello, Joe. Nice to see you. That would be the first thing I do, but I think I would regularly want to practice that left hand by itself just to make sure that it's amazingly good, because we can't rely on the pedal there. You know, a little touch perhaps every now and again, maybe here, but not here, because we want to preserve the clarity there. The trill itself, I don't think there's anything too wrong with a measured trill. Whether you started on the upper note or the main note, and I've heard both, is kind of up to you. It's preferable to start it on the upper note if there's any doubt. Notice I'm not connecting anything here. A new start. Now, the trill itself, let's look at it from a mechanical point of view. Hi, Candy and Christine. What we need to do is to choose a pair of fingers that we're going to trill between. I like 3-in-1. I can do a nice rotary trill there and keep that going for a long time, but very light. The dynamic is piano here. We want it very light. You could trill with 2 and 3, and if you're going to trill with 2 and 3, I always recommend considering putting a little wave in the arm, just a little bit of mobility there, rather than just sticking on the spot, but just move it a bit. Another fingering which I actually wouldn't use, but it's a possibility: 1-3-2-3, 1-3-2-3. It tends to be, that fingering is very good for loud trills, which are measured out: 1-3-2-3, 1-3-2-3. You could go from 1-3-1-3 to 2-3-2-3 and alternate those two fingerings if you wanted, but I'm going to keep it simple and stick with 3-and-1. And I'm going to start from the upper note. So what I would suggest doing is a variety of possible measured trills. This is too slow, but it's useful for practice. Now, what would it be if I did triplets? I've got 2s against 3s between the hands, so I don't recommend actually doing that in the end, but it's a useful thing to practice. Let me now put 4 notes in. 4 notes for every one left-hand note. My trill is too loud. I'm doing it that way just to show you how that would measure up with the other hand. A couple of other good ideas for measuring the trill. I'll get on to how to do it unmeasured in a moment. But if you would hold down the finger, one finger, and just so I'm holding my G loosely and just tapping my A rhythmically. If I did the trill from the main note, I'd hold my A. I can hear it more clearly. I can hear it more clearly when I don't actually hear both notes of the trill. Now, in the end, I did a little experiment yesterday when I was preparing this. I went onto YouTube, found a few videos and slowed the playback speed down by a quarter, so that it was a quarter of the speed. And if you do that, you'll be able to hear exactly what's going on with the trill against the left hand. And I didn't hear anybody's performance where the trill was actually uniform throughout. It had a variety. Sometimes it was 5 notes per 16th semiquaver, other times it was 3, sometimes it was 4. So what does that show us? That when we practice it strictly, we're probably not going to be able to hang on to be able to hear it that way when we play it. So let's see, how can we do that freely? One thing you could try would be just to start the trill and wait a few moments and then begin with your see, I've got no idea how many notes I'm playing in my trill against my other hand. Another idea is to have the notes down in the keys, so the fingers, I mean, in the keys, and then just every now and again allow a few notes to come from the trill, and then stop the trill. So every now and again just allow it to speak, and then to stop it, and then allow it to speak again somewhere else, and then stop it. Those are a few ideas for practice. Do work on the left-hand dial. Make sure the left hand is amazing, and when you're playing, listen to the left hand and not the right. And if you've got a nice, comfortable movement for the trill, just allow it to take care of itself. But actually, there is nothing inherently wrong with a measured trill, with the concept of a measured trill. So don't get too hung up on it. The music is in the other hand. Okay, Richard asks, can you tell me the purpose of the G sharp in the 16th bar of an otherwise harmonic D minor piece, Menuet by Jean-Baptiste Lully from Essential Keyboard Repertoire by Lynn Freeman Olson? Right, I had to ask Richard for the score of this because I didn't have that particular edition on my shelf, and he sent me this. So this is Lully Menuet. A minuet is in 3/time. D minor, now F major, a little bit of time there, and this is the bar in question. So this is quite a simple question to answer. It would actually have been okay with a G natural if I just show you. That would be fine. Let me do that again. Why the G sharp? We've got to be aware, first of all, that's a dominant harmony, isn't it? An A major chord. Now, but an A major chord acting as a dominant in D minor wouldn't necessarily need a G sharp. If there were a G referenced in that chord, it could be a G, it could be an A7, couldn't it? This harmony, a dominant seventh. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the G would have to be sharp just because it's a chord of A major. But it's simply a lower neighbour. It's a chromatic lower neighbour to the A. A diatonic lower neighbour would also have been fine. So we've got to distinguish between those notes that we find, accidentals that we find in our pieces that are decorative, and those that are modulatory, if there is such a word, that take us from one key to another. So I hope that answers your question there. Betty, please demonstrate how wrist rotation is used in the first 4 bars of Mendelssohn's Song Without Words, Opus 19, number 4. I'm 76 years old and a returning student. I'm currently playing at an intermediate level, probably grade 5 or 6. I have small hands and some arthritis in my hands. Using proper technique, I'm playing without pain, but those 4 bars, especially bar 2, are difficult, and I'm not quite sure I understand exactly the proper way to use wrist rotation in them. Okay, let me just first of all, Betty, just illustrate the section so that people can hear what we're talking about. A major, what a lovely thing that is. Mendelssohn is so lovely, isn't he? I mean, he just writes the most gorgeous melodies, most gorgeous textures and harmonies. So yeah, Betty is mentioning particularly this part. Now, first of all, wrist rotation. I've got a problem with that term because if you think about it, the wrist really moves in 2 ways. One is up and down, and the other is laterally from side to side. When we talk about rotation, when I talk about rotation, I'm talking about forearm rotation. It's not wrong to call it wrist rotation, but it's not actually the wrist that's rotating. Some people map the movement according to the wrist. In other words, they notice that the wrist is rotating. So it's just a terminology. You know, we know exactly what we mean when we say wrist rotation, but I'd rather not use that term because this movement, this circular movement, I call that a wrist circle. and I call this movement a forearm rotation. So just as long as we're clear on the terminology. Okay, so let's just see if indeed that movement is appropriate in those particular, well, in that bar 2. Let me just unpack bar 2. Can you see me rotating here? Now there's the problem, because that's a big stretch. This is not so difficult to manage. And yes, the way that one would rotate would be you don't need big movements. I would need more firmness in my top finger, which I don't necessarily need to join. I could join, but I wouldn't be using rotation. And actually, it depends on the speed that you're playing. You don't necessarily need to rotate there. I'm not rotating. Instead, I'm using pressure to bring that line out. In other words, firm contact with my key bed to produce that cantabile. But a rotary movement tends to be freer and absolutely great if you want to avail yourself of it, but it would mean that you wouldn't connect these notes on the top. The pedal would do that job for you. Now that one is the problem, isn't it? Because we'd have to, unless your hand was capable of playing that ninth with the G sharp in there, you would have to release the A from before. So you might explore this better here. Let go completely, and let go completely again. And you're probably thinking, well, excuse me, how can I do that at the speed? There is time, because that actually is the high point of the phrase. It's an appoggiatura, isn't it? There we've got these two notes that lean against the harmony. You wouldn't want to take as much time as that, but if you had to, you could disconnect that from this. So just to get further into the subject of the rotation, how do we manage the rotation? So the elbow stays in one spot, in the sense that while I may move my elbow horizontally, I don't want to move it vertically, and I don't want to break in my wrist either. So do you notice the movement is just freely turning here in the forearm? Let go of the finger that I've just, or the fingers that I've just played. So from 3-2, when I play my thumb, I let go 3-2. When I play 3-2, I let go of my thumb. I don't bring my thumb up into the air. The forearm does that job for me. So the forearm does the job of lifting the fingers. I don't lift my fingers from here. So you can sit on one pair of notes for a while, and then when you're comfortable, just take the next pair. And now here, I'd need to move in a little bit because my pinky is on a black key. So I need to make a little adjustment. Now here's the problem one. Now I can manage that. If you can manage that without problem, then you can do the same job for each pair 2 or 3 times until you're comfortable with the position. And again, move in here because the thumb is now on a black key. When it comes to it, I want more sound here. So what I would do there would be to practice this upper line. Just by itself, using the fingering that I would be using were I playing everything. Another way of practicing it, very useful, would be to practice staccato, the semiquavers, the 16th notes underneath. And I'm disconnecting now, just for simplicity. I would join a few more of those upper notes myself, but if we're rotating, we wouldn't be necessarily joining. The joins would not work with the rotations. The joins would work if we just played lightly underneath. Here, I can join, but can you hear the tonal balance between these two notes always favours the upper. So that's the solution, or those are possible solutions, and I hope that gives you some help with that, Betty. Kathy says, I'm starting to learn Summer Eve by Grieg, found in Pianist Magazine, issue 115. I'm struggling with bars 14 to 18, specifically getting the left hand in sync with the right hand. I don't seem to be able to get it right slowly, not to mention up to the appropriate tempo. Thanks for any advice. So Summer's Eve, beautifully nostalgic piece. And now the minor, so nostalgic. And now it starts to move a little bit. Getting a little worked up. Now this is the bit that we're talking about, so it's Kathy. This is the bit that Kathy is mentioning. Now there are a few things here. Synchronizing the two hands with the pedal is probably what you're after, but what I'm going to do, just for the benefit of other people that may be wondering how they can better manage their right hand, I'm just going to open up the question to encompass both things. So the pedaling solution, there are two ways of doing it. One is to put the spread before the beat, and the other is to put the spread on the beat. So from the bar before, bar 13. Both hands are now up, but my foot is down. And what I'm going to do is to change pedal on my bottom note. And in order to get this spread working, I'm using a pivot. My second finger is my pivot. So I would have my second finger and my pinky on the keyboard, and I would make a movement in like this. Now all of them follow the same basic idea. You can't have that whole hand open, even if you've got a big hand. I wouldn't recommend it anyway. Spread it. Do you see how that works? Most important that we catch the bass note in the pedal, the E. So I'd need to change pedal on the E. Same thing here, both hands up, change pedal on the B flat. So that's one way of doing it, with the spread before the beat, but with a pedal change on the bass note. The right hand phrases are separated anyway. That's separated from this, which is separated from that. So if there's a little bit of a airspace in between each bar, from the right hand's phrase point of view, that's fine. There won't be a break in sound because the pedal would be catching. Now if you wanted, this is another neat way of doing it, put the spread on the beat. So on the beat, on the beat. And what it means is that the subsequent two left hand notes come with right hand notes, with right hand 16ths. Now when that's fast, that's fine, especially if you don't bang the thumb. So you don't want this. You don't want to put the weight on the thumb. You want to aim for the pinky note. See what I've got there? Otherwise, that makes it middle heavy, as Neuhaus would say, the pot-bellied monster, where the middles become too thick. So that works nicely. It saves the problem of the pedal. It actually makes it simpler, but you might find that you do maybe some before the beat and some on the beat, as long as the pedaling is together with this note each time. Pedal, pedal. Now, Okay, let's have a little look at the right hand. I was exploring this yesterday as I was preparing, and I was looking at the fingering that I happen to have in this edition, which I just got from IMSLP. I've got copies on my shelves, but I just thought I'd use this because it's a good fingering. So you've got two fingering groups. You've got 4, 2, 3, 1, 5, 2, 4, 1, 4, 2, 3, 1. So those are grouped in twos. And it's very useful to practice them together, so fourths together. Now the next group uses a double thumb, so you've got 5, 2, 4, 1, 3, 1, if you're using this fingering, 5, 2, 4, 1, 3, 1, so I reuse the thumb twice. So bar 17 is 3 groups of 4, and then bar 18, it follows the second recipe with the double thumb. So that's one group, that's another group, which is the missing note G, F that he doesn't write. So how do we practice that right hand to make sure it's fantastic? As I've suggested, do first of all together. Here again. Now I would lift my thumb there, but connect 4 to 3 for practice, and then, and then I'm getting muddled up with my own fingering here. That's one way to practice it, and again, do that fairly regularly so that you really feel the pairs. Another thing to do is just to take the upper line, which is missing out the zigzag. You can do that against the left hand. Make sure you use the fingering that you're going to use. That's very helpful because it shows you the fingering grouping, and it also tunes your ear into the implied melodic top. You can do the same thing for the underneath. Thumb, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1. Other things, you could do sixes, in other words, take a pair of notes and make a sextuplet subdivision of it with the accent first of all on this finger, then on the bottom finger. Now move to the next pair of notes. Something quite hypnotic about that, very useful sensation in the hand. Let's say you're going to double up. Here's where you can be creative. Double up perhaps just those black notes where you've got a pair of black notes. And so on. You might do that with the white keys. Here's 2 whites. At the end of the bar you've got again 2 white keys. That's kind of creative, fun type of practice which brings your awareness to the patterns within. Final question is from Jenny. No matter how much I practice, I just can't seem to get the beginning of Ravel's Sonatine first movement to sound good. It feels so clumsy and lumpy. Can you give me some suggestions? Thank you. Yeah, I've actually got my own study edition of the Sonatine here, Jenny, and I've got all sorts of footnotes and various possibilities for fingering and choreography, because it's really a question of which hand goes over, which hand goes under. So here, my left hand is over, here it's under, over. Into different territory the beginning. So the first thing I would do would be to organize a fingering. Now let me just give you one suggestion here. So I'm using 1, 2 in my left hand, then 1, 4, and then I change to 2 in my left hand so I can keep my hand higher. It avoids the clash. Now I do a little redistribution here. On the second beat of the second bar, I let my right hand take the A, because it's there, may as well. And then I do a 3-5 in my left hand so that I can swing under and then come back over again. Break. Same, obviously. Now those movements, you may think, well, I haven't got time to make those movements. You will eventually make them very, very comfortably. They don't feel anything to me. I just enjoy the sensation of movement, freedom of movement. So for practice, start off with just this line. So it starts with a rest. That's important. Don't start off with a great heavy downbeat, but listen to what's left of the C sharp. That note's dying. I want to catch the remains of it and match up. Crescendo, pianissimo. I'm using the fingering that I will use. Mezzo forte. Get to know that line very, very intimately by itself, with no reference to anything else. Then let the underneath, the left hand, lower left hand, softer, and then the melodic line or the doubling disappears for a while. Once you're happy with the first violin part and the cello part, see if you can get a good sound. I forgot to breathe. And then like a side. I'm not happy with that, so I'd work on that little corner until I've got a really good balance between the two lines. Now when I come to put my middle notes in, I would practice first of all staccato, and actually quite regularly. Kathy says, hi Graham, thanks so much for all that guidance, most helpful. Very good. Very glad always to be able to help people, that's great. So for practice, I'm doing this without the pedal because I have a fingering that enables me to play legato, the upper and the lower voice, without needing the pedal. Of course we use the pedal, but I like the feeling of just grazing the pedal, just very, very tiny. A little bit more there, but here. I want the transparency in my sound there. So just minimal pedal, and just to practice it quite often without. But did you notice there that if I aim for something staccato in the middle, I can hear everything very rhythmically, and I've separated the two touches. So those would be my suggestions for that opening, Jenny. I hope that's given you some help with it. And those are the questions that I've had for this month. So we're finishing a little earlier than normal, but that's because we didn't have as many questions this month as we had previously. So I hope you've enjoyed the clinic. I've very much enjoyed being here and going through these pieces, going through these questions. So if you do have any questions and you're an Online Academy subscriber, everything is in the box below in the description, so click away, and I will look forward to seeing you next month. Bye for now.